And we're live.
Yes,
While we wait,
yes.
while people roll in, I'm going to go ahead and send out a tweet and an Instagram.
I'll do the same thing.
You got to do all the things,
Gotta do all the things.
right? How's your day going?
It's going all right. It's been a busy day. I'm excited just to kind of chill right now, have a fun conversation, kind of take a breath. It's just been a rapid fire day. Not a bad day, just a little quick.
A lot of things going on.
There's a lot of things going on, but I can't complain, you know?
How's that prep for the new EP going?
The prep is in like live show performance prep.
Or just in general, getting things ready?
Oh, gotcha. That is actually a blast. This is I've been doing more promo on this EP, or like we have more promo scheduled for this EP than any other release in the past. So it feels really good. So
Does it
yeah,
kind of make it feel like it's real?
it does. Yeah, it feels less fictitious for sure. Because like when I normally release music, it kind of feels like I'm just like in my own world, and I'm just doing this kind of on my own. And if people want to tune in, then that's awesome. But this feels more legitimate. It's definitely already a different approach, and we're still 14 days. We're 2 weeks out from release still, so it feels good.
So it's only going to get more crazy as time goes on.
Yeah, which I'm very ready for that. Despite the fact that I just said that I've had a hectic day, I'm very ready to have no free time at all and just keep everything super busy.
For sure, dude. Well, let's talk a little bit about your musical past. You've been an artist for a while now. It's been several years, and you've
Yes.
reinvented yourself like several times over the last few years. Can you talk about your progression from your original solo project to then being like in a big room duo
Yeah.
and to where you're at right now?
Yeah, that's funny. People don't really bring up the original solo project, so it's fun to reminisce on that for a second. So after being in some bands when I was in middle school and high school, I started making music, just kind of tooling around on my computer, and I did that under a name called Stratic. It meant nothing at all, but it was just like I was like 14 or 15. I was just having fun, and I was making progressive house, like traditional progressive house, sort of in the Deadmau5 style, something similar-ish to that, like a blend of that style and more of the like the festival progressive house. And I was having fun there. Ended up meeting this guy through school, and we ended up becoming a duo. But I was showing him my demos, and I thought it's funny because I got into EDM through Skrillex, just like everyone else did, everyone else in my demographic. So
Right.
I showed this guy, my friend, who I ended up being in this duo with. I was like, hey, listen to this new dubstep that I just made. But it was like super house, which is really funny to look back on. And then he and I started this duo for like big room progressive house sort of stuff, and it was most of our releases were very melodically driven.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I felt most comfortable. And eventually we just didn't have the same artistic vision anymore, and I was more interested in like tech house and those different subgenres, especially because the bookings that we had just started barely getting, we were opening for artists where if we played our own style, then we would have to, like, it wouldn't work. Like it would have eclipsed the energy of the headliner. So through that experience, I became really interested in tech house because then I could make music that was appropriate for the headliner. Turns out that I ended up like really loving the genre. Before that time, I hadn't really explored tech house too much. And then from that idea of making more of this melodic, slower, groovier style, that's where Ekonovah was born, more or less. And ever since then, I've had the same vision, but I think I finally have found my footing with where I wanted to like really take it.
So there's been an interesting progression because it sounds like the melodic thing was always something that was part of the final vision. And it seems like you're just finally starting to figure out how you can fit that into the style that you adopted when you began your new project. Is that right?
Yes, yes. I finally, because I think I've been distracted by the mainstream sounds, or like the quote unquote like the successful EDM hits, and a lot of them have been obviously like pop hits in like EDM blends, which I'm not necessarily that interested in terms of like the super mainstream stuff.
Right.
The other EDM hits were more of let's use Chris Lake for example, or Fisher, like these like tech house perfectly orchestrated tracks that were meant for the dance floor. And I think I was kind of caught up in that. I was trying to emulate those sorts of styles. There's nothing wrong with those styles because I love them and I play those kinds of tracks in my sets all the time.
Right.
I still make them for fun. But what I was really wanting to do, like what I had always been trying to do, was to incorporate more of a melodic style in that context of these like massive dance floor danceable tracks.
Nice. So do you think that kind of harkens back to like your musical past is deep? I mean, even deeper than just being a 14-year-old starting to write what you thought was dubstep at the time. But it goes back to like you were 2 years old when you first started playing the piano.
Correct.
I mean, it's crazy that you were that young. Are your parents musical? How'd that come about?
My parents do not have a musical bone in their body. my mom's father he plays the harp, and he's been playing in some mariachi bands over the last several decades. So I think if I've inherited any music genealogy, it's from him. I don't know why my parents put me in keyboard lessons when I was 2, but like my first recital, I played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star back when I was living in Texas, in Houston. So I can't remember a time when I wasn't playing piano, or when piano wasn't a part of my life in some way, shape, or form.
And at what point did you decide that you wanted to stop playing other people's music and start writing your own?
Actually, that happened pretty early on for me. I think I was in 5th grade or 6th grade. I can't remember which one. I was 10 or 11 when you have keyboard lessons or piano lessons, you're like with a teacher, and they're giving you sheet music and you're just playing the song. And that was fun for a while. But when I was like 10 or 11, I remember I started like writing my own music back then. And then I told my mom that I wanted to stop with the lessons because I was just kind of bored with learning songs. I was more interested in creating and writing songs. So I think I always kind of felt that or knew that deep down. And then like when I was in bands in middle school and high school, I was really serious about those bands. Like I really wanted people to show up for band practice, and I really wanted to try to get us booked and to just like do all the things that you should do as a band at that point in time. And my bandmates weren't as enthused, but I think I always had that sort of entrepreneurial creative drive somewhere inside.
So it's been a combination of like talent and just like kind of this innate work ethic that you've always had.
I think I have a good ear, but it's definitely taken a lot of work and a lot of time to figure out where I wanted things to go.
Well, it's good that you're starting to figure out where you fit in, but and it seems like you've been there for a while. The Ekonovah project has been, fabulous for the last 2 years.
Thank you.
Just a few months after the first thing you posted was a Porter Robinson flip, right?
Actually had a few originals which have been taken down.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I put that flip out within the first year. I'm pretty sure within the first year.
And within a few weeks of it, he was already playing it.
Yeah, man, it was crazy. I was still going to school at Arizona State, and I remember I came home from like not that good a day, and I went into my dorm room and I opened my laptop and I checked some notifications, and a few people tagged me and said, "Hey, Porter played your song at," I think the first venue where he played it was Freaky Deaky in Texas. And there was a video of it, and I just like bawled because I mean it's just such a flattering thing to see. Like I remixed it, the artist whose song I remixed played it, which is the ultimate, at least for me, is the ultimate stamp of approval. Like if someone remixed my song without me knowing it and I found it and I played it, like that would mean that I really liked it. Especially, it means that you like it more than your own track, at least for me.
Especially a song as big as that one.
Yeah. So it was incredibly humbling, to say the least.
Did you get in contact with them after that?
No, we've tried, but I just haven't been able to get in touch. Maybe later though. Who knows?
Well, that's still pretty fucking cool that he played your flip of his song. I mean,
dude,
what a huge honor.
Yeah, it really is. Like I said, so flattering that he played it, and it's gotten a lot of support from other artists as well. And in terms of my flips and remixes, that's probably my most popular, and it's also my personal favorite too.
Nice. So can you tell me about your favorite night out as a DJ and your favorite night out as just a raver? I use that term, and clubber interchangeably, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course. Those are good questions. Okay, so my best night as a DJ, like as Ekonovah, would probably it's hard to choose. I mean, I feel like I have to say EDC. That was I played on the third day at 4 a.m. on the art car in 2019. So I was, or maybe it was the second day. I can't remember. It's hard to recall. But needless to say, I was incredibly tired. My body was aching, and I remember thinking that no one would be there for my set because of the time. But I mean, that was my first EDC. I didn't realize how enthusiastic people were to stay from open to close. And it was a really good time. I had a lot of friends who were there and a lot of people who I hadn't met who knew my music. So that was a really flattering, humbling experience, but also really fun just to be a part of EDC in any capacity, let alone the 4 a.m. art car stage. That's just such a different experience compared to just like a club, just because it's outdoors, it's EDC. The energy is just so much, just so different.
No,
and
absolutely.
Then just the experience surrounding EDC was so much fun. Just the lead up and the adrenaline, that the entire experience is probably what makes it my favorite moment as a DJ. And then as a raver, the first thing that comes to mind is probably seeing San Holo live. I hadn't started Ekonovah yet, and I think it was Gold Rush 2017 here in Arizona. It might have been 18. It's like I said before, it's hard to recall. Time is so blurry right now for me. But
right,
yeah, seeing San Holo perform live is really inspiring to me. He played guitar live, and there's this one moment during his set here where he kind of went off script and he started just fiddling around on his guitar, and everyone there was like no background music. It was just him on the guitar in front of the stage, and like a song had just ended. He was just toying around on a little melody, and I was watching him with anticipation, wondering where the song was going to go. And then he told the crowd, he's like, "Hey, I was just kind of messing around there for a second," but like as if he was like making it out to himself. Maybe I'll like write that later, turn that into a song later. I just thought that was really cool. That's really stuck with me. Just his sense of performance,
right,
I found really alluring, and he's still one of my favorite artists today. I still really enjoy his music.
It's interesting you bring him up because he's so focused on melody all the time.
Yeah,
that's where your music is going. And because you have a past like actually playing live instruments, do you ever see yourself moving into a live performance and away from DJing?
Yeah, I do. It's still very rudimentary, the vision that I have for it. Right now, I'm so laser focused on making music that just really makes me feel satisfied and fulfilled. And I'm not even really thinking too much yet about the fully realized performance aspect of my project. I'm more focused on the fully realized version of my music, which I think I've gotten there now. But I do kind of see this version of my live sets where I'm playing, or I'm DJing and I'm playing on CDJs. I'm playing tech house, and I'm playing my sort of take on future based tech house, like what I've been making more melodically lately with my vocals. And then while doing that, maybe singing live instead of having piano live, which would be maybe more in my comfort zone. I think I could see myself singing live and bringing that aspect, which is saying a lot because I'm such an introvert and getting on the mic is so difficult for me in any capacity, let alone singing. But I kind of feel compelled to do that. Just I feel like that's where the music is taking me, despite the fact that I have no intrinsic desire to do that as a person. Just like the artist in me wants to, but I don't at all. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Do you see those two things being different though? I actually had a really interesting like Twitter conversation with the EDM community where I was talking about stage presence, and my point was that I feel like there's a lot of credence paid to stage presence these days, and almost too much. So much so that if a performer gives an understated performance, they're thought of as less than as somebody who's up there like throwing their hands around.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to understand, like, what's your take on that? Since you said you're an introvert, like,
Yeah.
what do you feel like when you're actually performing? Is that something that's difficult for you to get over, or do you kind of feel at home on stage because you're like in a different wavelength?
I feel at home on stage, but I do not feel at home if there's a microphone in my hand at all. But I feel so comfortable playing live. After like the first 5 seconds, all the butterflies go away, and I'm just like, usually I get right into the zone,
Right.
and the hour goes by like that. But what you said is interesting. It's like if you're not on the mic and if you're not like really doing crowd control with your voice, especially maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I think that was kind of taboo not to be on the mic, and people were
Right.
like, well, it's not really a night out if someone's on the mic telling me to drink on the 1, 2, 3, 4, everybody jump or everybody jump. But I think a more understated performance on the microphone, like you were starting to say, I actually
Yeah.
kind of think that could play for me into my favor. I think it's important for me to be completely genuine. So when I'm performing, if I'm ready to get on the mic, if I feel up to it, I'll do it. But I'm not going to be like the hype DJ. Like that's its own world and that has its time and place. That's just not for me. So I don't really. I'm still figuring that part of myself out too. I've actually gone to therapy about this because I get such. I just freeze up. That's really something I work on. But like this is super easy. Just a conversation. This is fun. But
Right.
once I'm in front of just a few people, it begins to change. But compared to I was a few years ago, I used to have really bad social anxiety, but I feel like a completely different person now. So in this performance aspect, that's the last thing that I'm trying to actively work on.
Absolutely. Do you feel like being a part of the dance music community has helped your anxiety in any way?
Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Do you feel like being a part of the dance music community has helped improve your anxiety in any way?
Yeah, it definitely has in more than one way. Just friendships that you make and the camaraderie, just and the energy that you feel just when you're in a club or when you're at a festival or just in any kind of dance floor. Just as an individual, I feel like there's this sense of community, and that helps social anxiety just in and of itself, at least for me, especially when that community is very supportive and very open about these sorts of topics. So I've found that I've actually never really thought about this, but now that you bring it up, it actually has been pretty cathartic to have these friends with this shared musical taste who also have kind of been like therapists over the last few years.
Yeah.
And then there's the flip side of that. Like I feel like I've been recognized as an artist, which when I was younger, that was something I was really, really, really chasing, and it felt so out of reach. But now I feel like I'm at a place where my peers are people that I've been looking up to for the last few years and before. And I think that in and of itself gives me more confidence too. So I think there's like two sides to that coin that have really boosted just how I feel personally and also as an artist.
Absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned when your peers are the people that you previously look up to.
Yeah.
It's something that I hear often when I interview people, and it's kind of a sign that you feel like you can be successful as a musician once that starts to happen. Do you think that that's something that rings true to you?
Totally, 100%. I mean, you'll always have that voice of doubt in the back of your head, regardless of what you're doing. But I feel like,
Right.
especially with when you're chasing something that's so um, rare to have a successful career as a musician. Um, but then once you become friends with people that you've been listening to, like people that have been in your Spotify library since before you were like of legal age to drink,
Right.
and then you're just chatting with them and they're like, yeah, I've had like all the same insecurities, and I almost quit a few times. I'm like, wow, I considered quitting a few times, and I almost got like just a regular job, which just for me, I would have never been fulfilled with. So there is comfort knowing that there's these shared experiences, and that my peers have been in the same position where they met their peers and then they had shared experiences. So I like, I think that's a pretty cool angle that we've all had that.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, we're all just a bunch of people, right? We all have the same fears and insecurities and holdups, and we're all just flailing around trying to figure this shit out.
Tell me about it.
um, so let's talk a little bit about the new direction your music is taking, because again, it's just fascinating that you've taken this on, especially taking it on over the last year when I feel like a lot of artists have really gotten inward, and some have found it really difficult to create. Um, what led you to use this quarantine time to kind of reinvent yourself?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense that a lot of people had writer's block, or just had a hard time getting started with, or like just working in general, really.
Yeah,
Um, and I felt that for a brief period of time, but I'm very fortunate that that writer's block went away pretty quickly, actually. In March, when lockdowns began, obviously, that's when I really started, like late March. It was like really only maybe 2 weeks after everything started.
yeah,
Um, the reality set in that, okay, we're probably not going to have shows for a long time. And for me, for my musical path, that meant making bass house or making tech house doesn't really make sense, because there's no dance floor and
right.
people don't typically like to listen to like bass house when they're by themselves in the car driving. I do, but I feel like that's just because I'm kind of a nerd and I'm a producer, and when I listen to bass house in the car, I'm like picking
Picking it
apart
apart.
what they did. But I think most people, when they're driving, even if they love EDM, they're listening to more melodic stuff, coincidentally,
Right.
or something with more of a message, more of a story, or some sort of emotion, vulnerability. And in realizing that I no longer had this opportunity where I could play my music live for a dance floor, I started to naturally, almost subconsciously, started making music that would be applicable for what people were experiencing at the time, which was just being locked up. No one was having people over. Well, a lot of people weren't having people over, and people were mostly just isolated, at least in those first few weeks slash like first month or so.
Right.
So after that initial epiphany, I started making music that was more appropriate for like kind of listening by yourself. And my latest release, Nostalgic, is probably the best example of that, because while it's still got that 4 on the floor house rhythm, it's still very chill and laid back. For example, like I have a hard time playing that in dance floor, like club settings now. Like I've been starting to put sets together for some upcoming shows, and I had a show on the 17th. That was my first one back of last month. And when I was getting prepped for it, I realized that was actually really hard to have it flow in my set. Which is ironic because now I have the opposite problem almost. But that's what got me started. And in realizing that the most appropriate thing to do at that point in time was to make more melodic music, something that wasn't as aggressive, it made sense to incorporate lyrics and incorporate vocals into it. And at this stage, I had been trying to work with artists before. With vocalists. And I've always been, I feel like vocalists might say that I've been hard to work with, because I'm very picky with lyrics and I'm very picky with melodies.
Right.
And I mean, the reason I started producing in the first place, in addition to the fact that I just love the music, is that I wanted to be able to control all the aspects of it.
Right.
So it just made sense. And of course, we're all locked up. So it just made sense for me to do it, grab my mic and just make something happen. And that's where The Beginning was written, which was my first release that had that style. That was like right on the cusp of quarantine, but it was like around the same time. It was when coronavirus was in the news and people were starting to wonder if there would be shows.
Right.
And Nostalgic happened then. And then to be more relevant, my upcoming EP, which is out on the 20th with Space Yacht, the lead track, the title track on that, which is called Floating, which is my favorite from the EP, that was written as well early on in this quarantine phase. I think that was late March, like right at the end of March. And writing that song and having The Beginning under my belt, I looked at those two tracks. I was like, okay, I see where this is starting to go now. Especially because The Beginning is more hyper, more festival made. Right. And then this track Floating, which is coming out soon in 2 weeks, is more of a tech house, slower, groovier thing that you could listen to by yourself and kind of vibe a little to on your own. So I was starting to figure out where I wanted to have my midpoint and just like where the project was going. It was like, that was like when I first found my footing.
Nice. And do you feel like storytelling has gotten more important to you as you've progressed further into this new realm?
Yeah, I think storytelling / vulnerability has been important. I've been trying to focus on songs that are really deeply personal to me while making them also relatable. I've been putting intention into writing that. So yeah, I would definitely say that's been a focus, but I haven't had to try too hard for that. Fortunately, I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve, so that's kind of come naturally to me.
Well, that's something I kind of wanted to bring up too, because you have this. Not that I don't appreciate the club bangers, because I do.
Same.
But your music now has this heartfelt quality to it. Do you feel like this is more personal for you now than it was before?
Oh yeah, no question about it. It almost felt like before I was producing for like a different version of myself at the time. Like I wasn't really aligned with what I truly wanted to do. And in retrospect, I kind of always knew that, and I understand that now. But now I can see like last night I wrote a song that I'm so excited about, and it's just like that feeling. I never felt that much of a rush in the past when I wrote something that I liked. Like this is just such an intense like dopamine hit that I had never experienced before. So it's way more fulfilling, way more satisfying, and way more personal. I think those really check a lot of boxes off for me.
Yeah, you're lucky it took you you didn't take you that long to get there, because you're still in your 20s, right?
Yeah, I'm 23. I turned 24 in July.
Yeah, you're still young. Sometimes it takes people like, 10, 20, 30 years to get to the point where they're like, oh, I know I'm making what I want to make now. So it's remarkable that you were able to get there so quickly.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't take that for granted at all. That's for sure.
For sure. So let's talk about you getting the new EP signed to Space Yacht.
Yeah.
They're a new record label, but they've already established themselves based on their brand. Like, it's a huge thing to get signed to Space Yacht and to have that kind of brand recognition behind you. But they don't normally sign EPs. Why was it so important that you convinced them that this whole thing needed to be signed as is?
So first of all, I just have to say I love Space Yacht. Their team is amazing. They're so easy to work with, and I love them. And they before they had their label, they booked me for several other shows, and every time I've played with them and been a part of their lineups, it's just been an amazing experience. So when they started their label, I didn't know what kind of music they'd be signing at that point in time. Turns out that they'd signed like everything. Like they just signed a hip hop record, they signed drum and bass, they signed house, they cover it all. But at the time, I didn't know if my music would be applicable. But I was just so excited that they had a label in the first place, because I knew that like, they really excel at music curation.
Right.
So I was excited just to hear that. And and we started chatting about signing some tracks to them. We were just thinking about some singles, and they listed a few tracks that they were interested in. And of that bunch, we narrowed it down to the eventual 3 that this EP will be.
Yeah.
But I really like these 3 tracks because there's this arc to my personal development where the 3rd track on the EP is the most distant from my personal sound now, but it's still something that I love to play out live. It's more of like this tech bass house sort of banger, quote unquote.
Right.
And the middle track is kind of this hybrid between something that has these driving bass lines and it's kind of hard, but it's kind of masked by a delicate sort of messaging, and the sound design I think is delicate. There's some piano in it. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the lead is what I'm most proud of and what is most relevant to where I'm taking the direction, taking the music. And I just think that there's this really nice kind of neatly packaged, like here's this iteration between these different styles where I've started to figure out where I want this project to go and where I want my future releases to go. And I also like where it's numbered chronologically.
Yeah.
It isn't the order that it's almost in the order of how I actually wrote it chronologically, but the way that the EP is listed, number 3 is like the least relevant, to use that word again, is the least relevant for my sound, and number 1 is the most. I just like see this pretty like arc. And I'm also synesthetic, so I see when I see numbers or when I listen to music, I see color, and I don't quite see color from the numbers in this EP for some reason. My synesthesia is kind of wonky, but I do see like this nice gradient. It goes from like a blue to an orange, and it just makes sense to me. Like that's not something that people will get, but for me, it just has to be that way.
That's super fascinating that you just said that shit. That's your synesthetic. That's incredibly rare. How do you think that that's like had an impact on on how you create?
It's hard to pinpoint necessarily because I've always been synesthetic, and I didn't realize that I was different until I was in high school. It was so subliminal yet so apparent to me at the same time. I know it's oxymoronic, but it just was so apparent to me that that's just how people experience the world. So it's hard to say how that really impacted me when I was younger, but these days I don't really use it to my advantage. It's kind of a side effect while I'm creating. Sometimes it actually gets in the way and it's distracting for me. And like I said, mine is kind of wonky. So it's not like every time I hear a melody or a pitch, I don't immediately see that color. Mm-hmm. And every time I see a letter, I don't always see the color that corresponds to it. But, it happens pretty frequently. And like certain smells will make me see a smell might be the most vivid for me, actually. Certain smells make me see colors. Certain sounds, I like see like a texture in my mind's eye. Yeah. So I think it's helped me. Man, I don't know. It's really hard to explain. It's helped me order my EP, but I don't know if it's actually like been a tool that I've utilized. It's kind of just been this fun thing that happens, and I enjoy it, even though it gets in the way sometimes. But yeah, there are definitely not that many synesthets out there. I would love to have some more friends with synesthesia.
Yeah, I've met maybe 1 or 2 other people in my life who also have it. And they both said the same thing too. They said that they didn't realize that that's not how everybody experienced the world until they were in high school and they finally started talking to people about it.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah,
how that works.
How does that work for you when you're like out for the night or DJing?
It's horrible. It's that's probably where it's most distracting. I have a really difficult time talking to people in a club setting. I mean, obviously it's loud and you're just like kind of up next to someone's ear, and that's already hard to hear in general, probably. But for some reason in that context, when you're trying to focus on a voice, what you like hear, what you notice sound wise from the music in the club, for me at least, is only bass. And then all the like mids and highs kind of go away. Like you don't really notice them because you're focusing on this person's voice.
Right.
And in doing so, for some reason, their voice just sounds like pitch black or bright white. It's like one or the other when they're talking to me, and it's so distracting. And that's why I'm always say, what? I can't hear you. What? It's just, it's impossible for me to talk or have a conversation in a club with someone, let alone being introverted and kind of already having that kind of difficulty, which, like I said earlier, now it's been a lot easier lately. But it's good that it's gotten in the way the most, for sure, conversationally in a club.
For sure. And with all this new perspective that you have, how do you foresee yourself moving forward when we go back to, like, I don't know what regular means anymore, or what the future holds for us, but like when we start to get back to some semblance of normalcy, do you see yourself being able to move about, in the world a little bit more confidently?
Definitely. Yeah. For many reasons, but also we've all, I'm sure, become more grateful for everything around us. And I mean, I definitely played shows where I was upset after my show because I was like, wow, there's like weren't that many people here, and that got on me. Or I kind of got to my made me feel insecure, maybe upset, or I mean, even just like going outside in any capacity, at least at the beginning of quarantine. So now that things are starting to open, people are getting vaccinated, and there's this sense that things are like not really that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but like we're kind of at the end of that tunnel now.
Yeah.
At least that's what it feels like here in Arizona, which I know is more relaxed than a lot of other places in the States. But I do feel like I can have a new sense of gratitude, and I think that gratitude manifests as confidence.
I can appreciate that. That's a good thing. I think we're all leaving this with a sense of gratitude, and I think maybe we were living so fast before.
Yes.
That, I hate to say that we have to find good in everything, and this was like tragic for everybody and tragic for people more so than others. But I got to say that there definitely was like a huge learning curve. This is a huge learning experience for everybody, and if it's taught us anything, it's taught us all to maybe slow down a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely made me more mindful.
Yeah,
like you said, slow down, be more present. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
that if there is any, I mean, that is the silver lining. Like just to be optimistic. That's the big takeaway. I think that everyone is kind of realizing at the same time.
Do you see your DJ sets changing?
Yes, dramatically, actually. Yeah, at least compared to when before quarantine and before COVID happened. In fact, it was actually really that in and of itself had a really steep learning curve for me. Got the news that I was opening for Abstract on the 17th of last month. Nice. And I think I had about 10 days before that show, like 10 days to prep. And I definitely needed to prep because my library was pretty outdated because obviously no shows, and I wasn't staying super up to date on it. I was staying like moderately up to date on keeping my record box library nice and full and fresh.
Right.
But the learning curve was starting to learn how to embed my new style into a DJ set where I can play some of the music that I really enjoyed to play before COVID.
Right.
And it was really difficult for me because pretty much everything I played before COVID was minor key. So the way that you DJ that harmonically is it's like really easy to thread between those, at least for me. And once you start putting in a lot of major key stuff, which I had no experience with, like all of my new stuff, most of it is in major key. So it was really difficult just to learn how to thread between major to minor, get to the key that I wanted to. Like normally when I was DJing before, if I wanted to get to C minor, I know like the keys I need to play to get there. And there's just like a few, like 2 or 3 tracks max to get there. And now when you throw in the major key, it just makes things more complicated. Not just because of following that harmonic path, but because the energy and the vibes of the songs are so much more contrast now.
Right.
So that was really difficult. So to answer your question, now that things are opening up, like I have a few shows in Texas coming up in 2 weeks, I think, on the 14th. And the 16th, I'm like starting to understand this direction on how I can embed these more melodic tracks into this tech house / bass house sort of banger territory that I used to play, which has been really fun, but really challenging. Like I spent those 10 days leading up to that Abstract show, I spent almost all of my free time, pretty much all of my free time figuring it out. And it definitely paid off. It felt really fun to be able to weave between genres like I haven't done before.
Nice. So you think you're a better DJ now because of it?
Yeah, I do actually. I hadn't realized that before, but yeah, I think I am a better DJ. I think it's taught me some skills that I probably should have had before and that I never developed. So like we said, I'm grateful for that now. There's another reason to be grateful.
Absolutely. Glad I could open your eyes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually looking over my own music library recently. And I rebranded a year ago. I dropped my first track under my new alias last year, like at the beginning of quarantine. What a wonderful time to do that. But I realized that I had never actually written a song in a major key, like ever.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Was that one major?
I still haven't. I think I've done it once ever.
Wow.
Once ever I've ever written a song in a major key. It's always been in a minor key. And I know I used to like play the piano, and I was in choir, and I think I've always gravitated towards minor keys like naturally. Like even when I would just kind of fiddle around the keyboard, it always just happens to be sad boy music.
Same here actually. Yeah, I actually get that. I think there's this mentality that happier sounding music is cheesy and corny, and like to get to that substance, it has to be kind of a more sad, melancholy tone, which I just think there's that stigma, but I can totally empathize with that. Just writing only minor key, it took me a lot of work to realize that I needed to, like when I was making this new style with my vocals, that I needed to incorporate more of this major key. Like the first time I did that, I was like, this is weird. This is new for me, but I guess we're going to do that for this track. And then it turned out that like 80% of the tracks I make now are in major. But if you have time to try to write a major key track, it's probably a fun challenge.
I'm going to force myself. I'm going to force myself into it.
See if you can pull it off.
I'm pretty sure I can. I just have to force myself into it.
Yeah,
okay, that's the goal for today.
You gotta be like, I'm sitting down, I'm gonna make a track in F major right now, or C major.
Hey, F major is a good key too.
F major is. I like it. I like F major.
Absolutely. So we're getting like close to the end of the hour, and one of the things I always do with everybody is do a quick speed round, which I told you about.
Yes.
You don't know what these questions are, but basically I'm just going to ask you a round of either or questions or some short answer questions, and you just answer as quickly as possible without thinking.
Sweet. Okay, I'll try.
All right. You ready?
Let's do it.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs. Hands down.
Tacos or burritos?
Tacos.
Intimate club or festival?
Festival. I regret that. I think I want to go with club. Yeah.
All right. Snow or beach?
Beach.
Lake or ocean?
Ocean.
If you could have one superpower, would you choose flight or invisibility?
Flight. Oh, definitely flight.
You're the first person that I've done this with that has said flight.
No way.
Everybody was trying to be up to some mischief with invisibility.
Yeah, man. What's up with that? Flying sounds way more fun.
I had one person tell me that they wanted invisibility so they could get new DJ equipment, and I'm not mad at it.
That's clever.
It is.
Hats off.
Shoestring, curly, or waffle fries?
Waffle.
Yes.
Totally waffle. Some Chick-fil-A fries.
Yes. I recently introduced my son to waffle fries for the first time, and he's sold.
Yep. Smart guy.
Yep. Massive or serum?
Massive.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't really use serum that often.
I don't either. I've tried. I don't like it much.
Yeah, same here. I use it on rare occasion.
Yeah. House or techno?
House.
Love drum and bass or trap?
Drum and bass. So it's hard to do it without thinking.
For sure. Pop or hip hop?
You say pop?
But yeah.
Definitely pop for me.
Favorite color?
Blue.
Nice. Carl Cox or Chris Lake?
Chris Lake.
All right.
It's so hard though. I can't believe you made me do that.
It is hard. That's why I put it in there.
Yeah.
I mean, really, they're like two not just legendary DJs, but they're just so good at what they do and like the vibe they create. That you got to make it hard. Tuber Crew sucks.
I'm indifferent.
All right,
I'm
flip flops or
completely
shoes,
indifferent. Shoes.
and your guilty pleasure TV show.
Right now it's The Circle, which I am very much enjoying.
I've been like eyeing it on my Netflix queue, and I haven't been sure if I should watch it, but I think I will now.
Did you watch season 1?
No,
Dude, it's not the most intelligent, substantial TV that you could watch, but it's very entertaining. It's a nice way for me to wind down. I highly recommend it if you like those sorts of reality shows.
I watched, what was it? The one where Married at First Sight, with my wife, and that is again not the most intelligent television in the world, but I love to watch a good fucking train wreck, man.
There you go. Yes, I think you would like The Circle then.
For sure. Well, I'd like to thank you again for being here today. It's it was super fun talking to you. And did you want to go ahead and plug your new EP coming out?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned briefly earlier, the new EP is out on the 20th of this month with Space Yacht Records. It's a 3-track EP. I'm really, really, really proud of these tracks, especially the title track. So I just hope that people can take something away from it and that people enjoy listening to it. And I personally am thrilled to finally play these out live again. So, watch out for May 20th.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Alex Amaro. I'm here every week from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. This is House Philosophy. My guest today was Ekonovah. Thanks so much for being with me, guys, today. I'll see you next week. Stick around afterwards, bro.